you talked about the intuition that Joe Rogan and others were pressing about the scarcity of life makes life meaningful, and the finitude of life makes life meaningful. But there's actually dueling intuitions, and that's what makes this puzzle such an interesting puzzle. Because another intuition that I think most of us hold is that we want life to last, right? We don't want it to end. And so we have these sort of competing intuitions that we have to make sense of in this larger scheme of the question of meaning. So maybe we'll, figure that out as we go.
Well, that's a great one, man. And that's the tricky thing with intuitions, right? Like you can use them really well. And it's like, dude, you draw on other people's intuitions. And then as soon as someone wants to get off the boat, they're like, we're just talking about intuitions here. Get out of here. But they're so important to us, and they're so important for doing philosophy and theology and just every day, walking across the street. It's really popular right now. And I actually don't know why that is. But this is the kind of question that a lot of my student athletes have because they listen to Rogan or they watch The Good Place. Paul, any idea why like that's popping up in this culture, in this cultural moment, why this would be coming through? People wouldn't want to live forever.
Yeah, that's a great question. That I actually have not seen that episode, so I thought you were going to talk about something else. The great switch. So I did ruin it. Well, I thought it's the great switch that I thought was pretty creative is that this actually isn't heaven, this is hell kind of thing.
That was good.
That's good. Yeah. But in terms of the question you asked just now, I don't know. I wonder if it's a combination of the angst that we feel. There's this interesting thing going on called sunny nihilism or nice nihilism, where a lot of Gen Zers, evidently, so I'm reading about this, I see this, but they basically realize or have determined that there's no point to life, there's no meaning to life, but it's just like kind of this big Yahoo, let's go party, let's go have fun, let's just do crazy things. And so there's some of that going on in the background, I guess. And then I think some of it is that intuition pump, that life is finite and we've got to make the most of it. So, it's kind of the pressing of both of those and the kind of disenchanted age that we find ourselves in that makes people feel the force of that. And of course, if, this is all there is, if there's nothing beyond the mundane, life is kind of pressing, right? And we better make the most of it for tomorrow we die or something like that.
Right. Oh man, that's a great point. I think you just connected a bunch of strings for me. There's like YOLO, which it started off as a serious thing, and then we all just made fun of everyone who said that or got it tattooed. But that is what it is. You only live once. And it is, dude, that's great. It is like the sunny nihilism of the past. You'll hear apologists talk about how they long for the old atheists who to us seem more honest, and they'd say, life is meaningless and this sucks. So we're going to be absurdists or something crazy. And then now today, this was the caricature, and maybe rightly so, of the new atheists that, bro, you guys aren't taking your stuff as seriously as you should. And so I think that has kind of seeped in, and that makes sense. So that's really helpful. So Paul, I've seen it on the popular level. I haven't done as much reading in like the literature on death and immortality type stuff. I should, but I haven't. I've caught it from the culture. You have done a little bit more work. So who are the thinkers that you've been interacting with?
Yeah, I think on this question, there's this great little Cambridge Elements book by Thaddeus Metz called God's Soul and the Meaning of Life. And in there, he does a great job summarizing this argument from boredom. And so that would be a good place. It's a quick sort of way to access that. But sort of the classic argument or essay was advanced by Bernard Williams in 1973. And he was actually pulling from a play and just being creative. But there that's sort of where this began, I think, enforced within the philosophical literature. And then since then, there's been lots of, replies to replies and so on with Bernard Williams. But let me, maybe just to get us going, what if I summarize from Metz what this argument is? Because you're right, it is this kind of, you could even call it like this argument from repetition. So I've just got, it's like two sentences here. Yeah. The way he puts it, he says, there appeared to be only a finite number of actions that one could perform in an infinite amount of time. In which case, one must end up doing the same things. And doing the same things would be incompatible with the growth, progress, or at least variety that many associate with a life's being meaningful. And so there's that connection pretty clearly between, repetition forever and the lack of meaning. And so, the classic sort of example would be like the myth of Sisyphus and this rolling this rock up a hill only to have it roll down, only to roll it up again forever. I mean, this is a meaningless activity. And I think the argument, what it's pressing, is that all of our activities, maybe that's what they're doing in The Good Place, all of our activities become meaningless because they're so repetitive. So that's I think a pretty clear statement of the argument.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I catch that. And to me, it doesn't have much force. And maybe it's just because I think it's Camus who said you got to imagine Sisyphus smiling. And there's all sorts of like great memes about Sisyphus just being jacked and being like, I love doing this. And like I could listen to I think it's Yellow Ledbetter by Pearl Jam. I could listen to that on repeat maybe the rest of eternity. I love that song. I don't know why. But to me, it doesn't have. I love repetition and stuff. What do you make of this when you hear this? Like, does it have pull for you? Are you like, yeah?
Actually, I would want to. I was just looking at this quote earlier, and there's only one part of it that has some pull for me. So he says things like this. He says the second sentence, and doing the same thing would be incompatible. So here's a claim. Incompatible. So repetition is incompatible with three things, according to him: growth, progress, and then he says at least variety that many associate with, meaningful life. I think the first two of those three things they don't move me. In fact, they're pretty obviously false. So for example, is repetition incompatible with growth? I mean, I think it's just the exact opposite. Right. Empirically, we do things repetitively to grow. That's what habits are, and that's how we form character if we're good Aristotelians and things like that. So I think that one doesn't move me. It doesn't seem right empirically. I think Aristotle's right on that. That our habits are what form us, and so we grow through routine. In terms of progress, same thing. I mean, your example with Sisyphus, with the muscles. I mean, there is progress there, right? Even though he's doing a pretty menial task, right, in terms of growth and strength. And I think that you could see that for many of the things that we do repetitively. Like think of, isn't it Malcolm Gladwell that argued that, any expert needs to invest 10,000 hours to become an expert. Well, that's a lot of repetition in order to get progress. And I've got my son who wants to play soccer in college. And so every day he's out practicing soccer and things like that. And so that doesn't move me. So I think the only part of this that does have, to me, some plausibility would be the last piece that he says. He calls it, or at least variety, that many associate with life being meaningful. So I think maybe that one is where some of the intuitive pull works. If everything just becomes the same boring, monotonous thing, well, then life does seem kind of, boring and maybe meaningless. So I would focus there. But again, even there, and I'll pause, but even there, I think there's things we can say. How about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, okay. And I think you're right. You help motivate that one for me. I think when I have encountered this before and just thought about, I'm sure we grow up when we think about this kind of stuff too. When we think about heaven, if any of us think about theology when we come home after Sunday school, and you go, yeah, maybe that'll be boring. Or you have something in your mind like, you're sitting on a cloud playing a harp. I think what really does motivate, if you added this, would be if you think that you're perfect in the sense not of being sinless, but being wholly complete, then it's like, oh, okay, so my muscles, if we even think about having a new body, usually we think about being disembodied spirit on a cloud. But if I have this new body, it's going to be perfect, man. And with evangelicals, we talk about this all the time. I'm going to be 6'3" because that's the perfect height, right? And my muscles will already be fully formed because it's heaven, or it's the new heaven, new earth. So I'll be perfect. I think if you add that detail in, it does kind of wreck ship on everything. Because what progress are you going to make on a perfect body? What amount of knowledge are you going to gain when you have perfect knowledge? And so I think that intuition mixed with this third criteria thing could mess with some, at least evangelicals, if that's where we're coming with our theology. Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I would say, though, even with that third one, and actually, if we were to switch back to the original essay by Bernard Williams, and I'm just going to summarize, just to point your listeners to a great resource. Stuart Getz and Joshua Sechrist are two of the philosophers that I look to that have written a ton, both of them individually and then together, on the meaning of life. And one of their little books is with Rutledge. It's actually called "What is this thing called the meaning of life?" And in there, they summarize Bernard Williams' argument in terms of two conditions that need to be satisfied for the afterlife to be meaningful. And the basic two conditions that Bernard Williams set forth are an identity condition, and that's just the idea that we need to be the same person, both before and after death, to be the referent of that thing that enjoys. And then this attractiveness condition, AC, we could call it. The life of the person across immortal existence must be attractive to that individual. And so I think that it's the question of the attractive condition that to me is the real puzzle. That I think that when you bring sort of our Christian worldview or theology and philosophical thoughts to bear, I think that we have some things to say to that.
Yeah.